Hi guys, welcome to Grammar and Writing Lesson 39. Let's start off with our vocabulary. We are going to focus on our suffix first. Our suffix is graphy. Graphy, again, this is a Greek suffix and it means drawing, writing, or recording. So anything having to do with drawing, writing, or recording something, recording information of some kind, we use that suffix. For example, choreography. Choreography. You may already know what this means. What do you think it means if you already know or maybe think you can guess? This is the art of creating dance movements. Camila, this is something you're very familiar with. Choreography. Because when you're doing your ballet, you have to decide where you're going to move, in what part of the music, what steps you're going to take. So that plan of how you're going to dance, where you're going to dance, that's your choreography. For example, the musical displayed brilliant choreography. So that would be a play with songs and dancing. Okay, our next word is biography. Biography. Well, you know that bio means life, right? So what about life in drawing or writing? What do you think that would be? You're right, it's a written account of a person's life. So you guys are reading a biography right now with Miss Haley. Imbattibile, that's the biography of Louis Zamperini. So that's a written account of a person's life. For example, I read an interesting biography of Abraham Lincoln. So it would be a book about him. Next we have photography. Photography. Oh, you guys know what that is. That's the art of recording images with a camera. For example, proper lighting is important in good photography. And our last word for the day, yep, we got 4 words, so hang in there. Orthography. Orthography. Ooh, what's that? That is the proper spelling of words. When you see that ortho, that's usually having to do with words and spelling. So orthography is the proper spelling of words. Example, the editor checked the orthography of the book. An editor is someone who checks work and makes sure that it is correct. So the editor checked the orthography of the book. All right, let's practice. Fill in the blank with the correct vocabulary word. The careless blank of the paper made it difficult to read. Which one of our vocabulary words would fit that? Number 2, the life story or blank of Johann Brahms reveals his merciless self-criticism. Which one of our vocabulary words has to do with the life story? Number 3, one's interest in blank often leads to acquiring better cameras and developing techniques. So which one of our words would have to do with cameras? And finally, the blank of the ballet reflected the mood of the music. Okay, go ahead and pause if you have not done so already. Finish filling this out. I'm going to go to the answers right now. The careless orthography of the paper made it difficult to read. Okay, this is really the only one that matches. The careless orthography is the careless spelling. So they didn't spell well, so it was hard to read the paper because you don't know what words they're writing. Number 2, the life story or biography of Johann Brahms reveals his merciless self-criticism. Number 3, one's interest in photography leads to acquiring better cameras and developing techniques. And number 4, the choreography of the ballet reflected the mood of the music. All right, we are talking today about reviewing commas. So we've already talked about previously the first first two basic rules of commas. The first one was to use a comma and coordinating conjunction to join 2 simple sentences. And we talked about that a little bit in yesterday's lesson with correcting run-ons. You have to use a comma and coordinating conjunction. These are your coordinating conjunctions. and, but, or, nor, for, and yet. And, but, or, nor, for, and yet. Now we use an acrostic sometimes to help us remember that. And that is fanboys. F for, A for and, N for nor, B for but, O for or, Y for yet, and S is for so, which you don't see here. So you can use that to help you remember what they are, but those are your coordinating conjunctions that join two simple sentences. Rule number 2 is to use a single comma to indicate that a word or words have been omitted or to avoid a possible misreading. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, this can be used to separate 3 or more items in a series. So if you're talking about 3 or more things, you need to separate them with commas, a comma in between each item and before the conjunction that joins the last item. You need to use a comma to separate 2 or more adjectives that are preceding a noun. And remember that there were tests that go with this. And then you need it to avoid misreading. So, for example, if I want to say, before we ate my grandfather, we went to the store. Does that sound right? No, we're not going to eat my grandfather. Before we ate, comma, my grandfather and I went to the store. There we go. That helps us to keep us from misreading, from thinking that we're eating our grandfather or something like that. Okay, reviewing commas, rule number 3. Use a pair of commas to indicate a non-essential element in a sentence. Okay, a non-essential element is a part of the sentence that is not important. It's not needed in the sentence for it to make sense. Sorry, the camera's shaking. So that's a non-essential element. It's a part of the sentence that is not needed for the sentence to still make sense. So we use a pair of commas to set off words used in a direct address. Use a pair of commas, like is shown above. It has a comma, then a line to show what comes in the middle, then another comma at the end. Use a pair of commas to set off words used in a direct address. For example, your books, professor, have been returned. A direct address is when you are speaking directly to someone. So here you're speaking to the professor. So you have your books, comma, professor, have been returned. You're speaking to the professor, so you have to separate that off with commas to show that you're speaking to the professor. Okay, let's look at another one. Grandmother, when are you coming to visit? Here you're speaking to your grandmother. Now notice you only have a comma after grandmother. You don't have a comma at the beginning. That's because you don't ever start a sentence with a comma, and you never end a sentence with a comma either. So if your direct address, the name of the person that you're talking to, is either at the very beginning or at the end, then you just put the comma. If their name is at the beginning, you put the comma after their name. If their name is at the end, you put it right before their name. For example, what did you say, Michael? The comma here separates Michael from the rest of the sentence, but we only put it right in front of Michael because we need the question mark at the end of the sentence, not a comma. Okay. Use a pair of commas to set off the words well, yes, no, or why when they are non-essential. So this is when they're not part of the grammatical structure of the sentence. You need a pair of commas to separate them from the rest of the sentence. For example, well, I guess I had better go. It's almost like a sigh. I guess I had better go. You don't need the word well there. It's not essential. You could take it out of the sentence and your sentence would still make sense. So you need to put a comma in, to separate it. Yes, you are certainly correct. Again, you could take away the word yes and you could just say, you are certainly correct, and your sentence would still make sense. Use a pair of commas to set off parenthetical words or expressions. Okay, let's talk about what this means for a second. On page 45 of Language C, it says in the Look Closely box, a parenthetical expression is a comment or an explanation added to an already complete sentence. So again, these non-essential elements are things that you can take out of the sentence and your sentence still makes sense. So a parenthetical expression, that's just a comment or an extra, it's an added explanation when your sentence is already complete. An easy way to remember the term is to think of it as an expression in parentheses, something added which is not essential and can easily be removed. Instead of being separated from the sentence by parentheses, it is separated by a pair of commas. So some of these expressions, some examples could be at any rate, I think, I suppose, in fact, in my opinion, on the contrary, on the other hand, to tell the truth, nevertheless, indeed. Those are all examples of parenthetical expressions. So here's one in a sentence. Eric, however, will arrive late. So we see that Eric is arriving late. The however, that's your parenthetical expression. If you just said Eric will arrive late, your sentence still makes sense. Alyssa, of course, likes to swim. Okay, if you just said Alyssa likes to swim, still makes sense. But the of course gives a little extra oomph to your sentence. Of course, por supuesto, she likes to swim. Taylor, on the contrary, dislikes sports. If I said Taylor dislikes sports, it still makes sense. But on the contrary shows that this is different from somebody else. It gives extra information. You will work, I hope, as diligently as you can. You could say, you will work as diligently as you can, and your sentence is still complete. The I hope just kind of adds in your opinion to the sentence. Okay. This is now your turn, your homework time. Okay, your homework is to complete Language C, pages 44 through 45. Those of you who don't have a book, remember you have this in the pages that were given to you in your packet. You need to do all of the exercises. Think A, think B, and think C. So think A says to place commas where needed in the following sentences. This is going to be focused on Rule 3A. Rule 3A was to use a pair of commas to set off words used in a direct address. So when you're talking directly to someone or to a group of people. Think B is to place commas where needed in the following paragraph. And this is following Rule 3B, which is setting off the words well, yes, no, or why. And think C is to place commas where needed in the following sentences. And this is following Rule 3C. So this is the rule about using a pair of commas to set off parenthetical words or expressions. If you're not sure, okay, if it's parenthetical or not, take it out, say the sentence without that set of words, and if your sentence still makes sense, then that's your parenthetical expression. Look in the Look Closely box, and those words that are in italics, those are examples. So you can keep an eye out for some of those examples in your sentences. You might find words that are not in there in your sentence, but what was I trying to say? Yeah, you might find some examples that are not in that box in these sentences, but that will help to give you a good place to start. Okay? All right, that's it for today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Love you guys so much. Bye.